Okay, so before we dive in Mariv, in the break that we have now, we'll continue learning our Maseches Tamid. And again, we thank Yitzchak for handing out the Gemaras. We handed out the standard art scroll, the travel Gemara. If you're using the front section for Maseches Tamid, we'll be on Lamed Amid Aleph. We're towards the end of the Mishnah on Lamed Amid Aleph. If you're using the back, again, not all the way in the back because that'll take you to Midos, but if you're in the back of Tamid and the art scroll elucidated, it would be 38.3. So again, where are we at in the Mishnah? So we're up to the part where they're talking about the Korban Tamid. So I'd say that is about 8 to 10 lines from the bottom, we're after the parentheses, or right before the parentheses, Amr Lahan. So let's see, the Mishnah continues, it says Amr Lahan. So the Kohen who was in charge, the Mamuna, the one who was handing out all the rolls for that day's Avodah, he would say to them, take out one of the lambs that's being kept now in the Lishkas HaTzlaim, the chamber of the lambs. Where was the chamber of the lambs? So let's take a look at that map. You'll see I've got a map in every Gemara there. So if you look at section room number 20, number 20 was the Beis Hamikdash. That's where the Kohanim slept during the night. In the Beis Hamikdash, that's where the fire was. So in the northwest corner, you'll soon see the Mishnah is going to describe this. The northwest corner, that box that said there were 4 corners in that room that had different chambers. And that corner at the northwest, that was called the Lishkas HaTzlaim. That was the chamber where they kept lambs. They kept 6 perfect lambs in there to be ready to go for the Korban Tamid. 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. It was always stocked. So this way they never had to be concerned that they were searching for a perfect lamb. So let's see. So he would say to them, take one of the lambs, Milishkas HaTzlaim. And Vahare Lishka, where was Lishkas HaTzlaim? Nusrav Miksot Tzfanis Maravis. It was in the northwest corner of that Beis Hamikdash where they had spent the night. So that was a chamber, a corner chamber in that room. So now it says Arba Lishkos HaYisham, and now we're on the topic. There were 4 chambers in there. So the Mishnah is going to say, what were they each used for? So it says Achas Lishkas HaTzlaim. The one in the northwest, that was for the Lishkas HaTzlaim. That was a chamber where they kept lambs that they were going to be using for the Korban Tamid. What was in the other chambers? The next was Achas Lishkas HaChosamos. The other was a chamber where they kept Chosamos, literally means seals, or it could mean, in this context, they translate it as receipts. What did that mean? Everyone who was going to bring a korban that also had to have a mincha, a meal offering, as well as nisachim, that was going to have wine libations, you had to purchase that. You couldn't just bring your own. You had to purchase it from the Beis Hamikdash because it had to be of a certain quality. So what happened? There was a outside who had these receipts or tokens, you might say. So you purchased one of those and then went with that token to the booth that had the fine flour for the mincha and the wine for the nisachim. Well, where did they keep all these tokens? So there was a room in the Beis Hamikdash where all of those tokens were kept. I couldn't find it, but when I was looking, I think I saw it when we were learning these Mishnayos several months ago. I think I saw that also someone in the Mefarshim explained that Beis HaChosamos meant that was where they had the seals and the seals that were used for the oil. Remember, we all know the story of Hanukkah. The story of Hanukkah, they found one jug, one Pach Shem that still had the seal of the Kohen Gadol. I think when we learned these Mishnayos, I saw one parish that said maybe that was Pshat of the Beis HaChosamos, was that's where they kept those seals that they would affix to the oil jugs to make sure that everything was still tar. I couldn't find it today when I was looking for it. All right, let's see the next one. It says Achas Lishkas Beis Hamikdash. A third chamber there was used for another fire room. In other words, even though the large area in the middle, there was a massive fire that was going to keep the Kohanim warm both during the night and also in the winter months. Remember, Kohanim, we said they're not wearing shoes and socks, and they're working on a stone floor. It could get pretty cold. So they had this Beis Hamikdash that was always keeping them warm. So within the Beis Hamikdash, there was a corner room, a corner chamber that had another fire going. So some Mefarshim say that was just more intense because it was a smaller space. You could really heat up fast in there. Others say it was almost like a reserve fire that was going in case the main fire in the Beis Hamikdash out. And others say that what it was that was the room where they kept all the tools and everything that would be needed to keep the fire going, whether that meant extra logs, whether that meant, whenever you've got a fireplace, there's the tongs and there's whatnot to work with the logs. So it could have been some of that. In the fourth chamber of Achas Lishka, She'osim B'lechem Apanim. The fourth chamber in the corners in the Beis Hamikdash was the room where they would make the lechem apanim, the special bread that went on the shulchan, that every Shabbos afternoon, that's when they would replace last week's with the fresh batch. But where was it all made? It was made Erev Shabbos in that Beis Hamikdash, in that corner room there. And this was, they say, was the Garmu family. It was one of the families of Kohanim that was responsible for this. Okay, now that we've discussed that was kind of a tangent. The Mishnah continues. And it says, Nichnasu l'lishkas hakelim. After they selected a lamb, a different group of Kohanim went into the Lishkas HaKelim. That was a chamber where the Kelim was kept. It says, there was 93 silver and gold utensils or vessels that were used for the avoda every day. They'd be put away at night and they'd take them out in the morning. Remember, we pointed this out on Tisha B'Av, that one of the kinos said that the horror that they felt in the morning when they went and they did the tally, they did the count, and some of the utensils, some of the kelim were missing. One of the kinos had that in there. So this is what they were doing. They would start the morning off, making sure we've got all 93 of the service utensils. And then it says, Hishku es Tamid because Shalzav. Now we're on Lamed Amid Beis, if you're in the back 30b1. So it says that what would they do? They would take the tleh, they would take the lamb that was going to be brought as the korban tamid in the morning, and they would give it to drink from a golden utensil. This came up earlier in the Gemara that we said this was an example of, according to some Tanaim, some Amoraim rather, of the Mishnah Chazal using a Lashon Guzma, an exaggeration. Many said this, they didn't give a sheep to drink out of, a lamb to drink out of a real gold utensil. It was bronze or copper, but it was polished so well, it had such a sheen to it that it looked gold. That was what most of them say. There was one mandamar who says, no, it really was gold, because in a makam ashirus, in a place where there is such a majesty and there is such wealth, ein anius, we don't project any poverty whatsoever. It would have been pasnish in the Beis Hamikdash to use something that wasn't real gold. So even though it was so mundane, just giving a drink to the lamb that was going to be brought as a korban tamid, they still use gold. We also saw what the Mefarshim explained, why did they give it so much water to drink? We said that was to make it easier to skin it, because after the lamb was going to be shechted, it was going to be skinned before it was brought on the mizbeach, and the skin would come off easier the better hydrated the lamb was. I say, think of a raisin. When fruit gets dehydrated, it contracts. It comes in. So the skin, if you want to get the hide off of that sheep, it would be best to keep it massively hydrated. That's what some of the Mefarshim explain. So now it says, and even though they would have checked the lambs every night before they finished the day's work in the Beis Hamikdash, they checked the lambs that are in the Beis Hatzlaim to make sure that they're perfect. There's no mumin, there's no blemishes, so they can be brought as a tamid. Even though they were checked the previous night, they check it again in the morning using torches just to make sure nothing happened during the night. No blemishes found its way onto this lamb that would invalidate it from being brought on the Mizbeach. Mishnah continues, and it says, Misha Zacha B'Dishun Mizbeach Hapnimi. The Kohen who won the rights, we said there was a lottery going on for which Kohanim had different tasks during the day. And the next task was, after we talked about who was carrying the various parts of the Tamid onto the ramp of the Mizbeach, we said the next task was the Kohen who's going to clean off the Mizbeach Hapnimi, the golden Mizbeach that was used to burn the Ketoras. Every morning it would have to be cleaned off, all the ashes that were on it from yesterday's Avoda. So it says, the Kohen who won that right in the lottery, and also the Kohen, according to someone, was the same Kohen who did both tests. Some say it was two different Kohanim. The Kohen who won the right to clean out the menorah, because again, during the night, the menorah was burning. And one of the tasks in the morning, before they put in the fresh oil and fresh wicks, was to clean out the ashes from the burnt wick and the residue, whatever oil was left in there. So the Kohen who won the task of cleaning off the golden mizbeach, the Kohen who won the task of cleaning out the menorah, they would proceed, they'd go forward, they'd start making their way to the Kodesh, and they had 4 vessels in their hands. What were the 4 vessels? Hateni. Hateni was a golden basket. We'll soon see that was going to be used for the Kohen whose job was to sweep the ashes off of the golden mizbeach. Hakuz, that was a golden jug that was going to be used by the Kohen whose job was to take out and clean out the menorah from the ashes from the old wicks and whatever oil residue was in there. Ushnei maftachos, and there was also 2 keys. They required 2 different keys to enter into the Kodesh section, to unlock it in the morning. And we'll see how that worked in a second. Hateni, now let's just talk about the basket and the jug. So it says Hateni, the Teni basket that was used, that golden basket, it says Domil Tarkav. It was very similar to a Tarkav basket. Shalzav, it was made of gold. Tarkav basket was of a different volume. So it's saying it was very similar to this Tarkav basket that was pretty common around the time of the Mishnah, but this held a different amount. And then it says, how much did it hold? Machsa kabayim v'chetzi. It held 2.5 kavs, as opposed to a Tarkav basket held a different amount than that. V'akuz, what was the kuz? Doma lekitom gadol. It was like a large pitcher shalzav, also made out of gold. And that was what the Kohen, again, his job was to clear out the menorah. That's what he used. Now let's talk about those two keys. Ushtei maftachos. The Kohen or the Kohanim who had the task of going into the Kodesh section, they were also going to have to unlock it in the morning. They had two different keys. Echad shehu yored ba'amas hashechi. One key, they only could open the door by sticking their arm into the wall until the armpit, and that's how there was a hole that the Kohen would stick his arm in, and once it was that deep in there, he would use the key to unlock it. In other words, that's where the locking mechanism was, deep in the wall. That was the first key. We'll soon see how that played itself out. The echad shu poseh kevan. Another one was a standard key that opened quickly because the locking mechanism was right on the door. We're going to see now how that worked. Again, that's very interesting. The first key was not what we're used to, that the locking mechanism is easily accessible. The Kohen first had to stick his arm into the wall and only then access the locking. How that works. So the Mishnah continues and it says, Bolo lepishpash hatzifoni. He came to the more northern minor doorway. So again, if you would take a minute to look at your map, let me show you exactly what this means. Again, you saw there, room number 20 was the Beis Hamikdash. That's where the Kohanim spent the night. Now, if you go to 30, that's the stairways that is leading up to the Heichal. That's the stairways after the Mizbeach that leads up to the Heichal, to the antechamber, going into the Beis Hamikdash. 31, so that those Kohanim with the keys would walk through. That was a curtain there. That was the Pesach Ulam. That was the gateway going into the antechamber. 32 is the antechamber itself. Now, going forward, right, the Kodesh section's right ahead of them. They did not just walk straight to 34 and unlock the door. That's not how it worked. Rather, to the right of 34, which would be north, if you look at this map, you'll see that there's the Kodesh section, and it looks like there's kind of a hallway. There's the wall, and then a hallway, a wall, and then a hallway. That hallway was called a ta, or a chamber. That's how we'll see it's referred to. So there was a northern doorway. You see where that hallway is to the right, or to the north of the Kodesh. You have the wall, and then that hallway. There was a door. It's not on this map, but there was a small door that led from the antechamber, from the Ulam, into that hallway. That's the one where the Kohen had to stick his arm in until the armpit and then unlock the mechanism in there. When he opened that door, he would go through, you see it's a thick wall, that's where he'd stick his arm in there to unlock it. And then there would immediately, he'd make an immediate left, there would be a door going into the Kodesh section. That's what he was. So the first key was to get through that wall into that chamber. And then he would make a quick left. There was a door with a regular locking mechanism, and that would bring him into the northern wall of the Kodesh section. He'd be in the Kodesh, and then he would unlock the Kodesh section from the inside. Number 34, that's the gate, the Shara Heichal, that's the gate to the Kodesh section. He would unbolt that from the inside and open it up. That's what we're about to read now. So the Mishnah says as follows, Bolo lepishpash hatzifoni. He came to the northern small gate, meaning of the gate smack in the middle to get to the Heichal, north, meaning to the right of it, there was a small gate, and there was also a small gate to the south of it, to the left. So he came to the one to the north, which is to the right of that main door. Now the Mishnah says, by the way, there was two. There was one to the right, one to the left. Shnei pishpashim hayul l'shara gadol. There was two minor doors to the sides of that major entranceway to the Kodesh section. Achas b'tzafon, there was one to the north, meaning to the right. V'achas b'darom, and there was another one to the south, meaning to the left. Lo nichnas ba'odam me'olam, sheb'darom, the one on the left, meaning the one on the south. Lo nichnas ba'odam me'olam. No one ever went through that door. And what's that based on? This is based on a pasuk in Yecheskel. V'lavu meforish al yidei Yecheskel. That's the door that was described by Yecheskel that he said, Shenemar v'yomer elai Hashem, hashara zeh sagur yiyeh. That gate will remain shut. Lo yipaseach, it will never be opened. Ve'ish lo yavo bo ki Hashem Elokei Yisrael bo lo v'ayasagor. God's presence comes through that gate. No human goes through that gate. So stylistically, there was a small door to the left of the main door to the Heichal, but no one went through that door. That was left, so to say, for Hashem's presence to go in and out that door. The Kohen in the morning, whose job was to unlock the Heichal, he would go to the small door, which was to the right, to the north of the main Heichal door. Mishnah continues, and it says, Natalas Mafteach, he took that key, Upasach, if you're using the back, we're on 30b2, Upasach HaPishpesh. He used that, sticking his arm in until his armpit to unlock that mechanism deep in the wall. That's how he opened the pishpash. And then Nichnas La'ata. When he opened that pishpash, opened that small door, he found himself in that cell, in that long hallway that was just after the wall of the Kodesh section. Ume'atan, from that cell, he would make an immediate left, and there would be a standard door with a locking mechanism right there. He would use a second key to unlock that door and go into the Kodesh section. And it says, and once he was in the Heichal, then he would, again, think of it this way. He just, he came through the Pishpash, he made a left to unlock that door. Now he walked through that, he's in the Kodesh section, he makes another left, now he's at the inside by that door, so he would unbolt and open the door to the Kodesh. That's what he says. He's now at the big door that opens the Kodesh section between, meaning the Kodesh and the Heichal, between the Kodesh and the antechamber, and the Ulam rather. So he says, Egil Shara Gadol, Haviras HaNeger. So he removes the bolts, Vasa Poschos, and whatever locking mechanisms was there, Upascho, and now he opens. That's how the morning begins, by opening that big door to the Kodesh section. And the one whose job it was to shech the carbon tamid would not proceed to shech the carbon tamid ad sheshomeya shar gadol sheniftach, until he heard that great door, that great gate was open, that the Kohen had gone through those other two doors and now opened that great gate. Apparently it made a lot of noise, it made a significant amount of noise, so that he could hear that. Once he heard that, then it was time to shech the carbon tamid, and the day gets rolling. Okay, we're going to pause here. We'll continue, God willing, tomorrow. No, I'm sorry, Jonathan's got a question. Yeah. Very good. The Mefarshim point out the Lishkas HaKelim, where the 93 Kelim were kept, you won't find it on that map. And in fact, the Mishnayos never really give a description of where it was. Also, Maseches Midos doesn't give it. So the Mefarshim kind of leave that with a question mark. They're not 100% certain where that Lishkas HaKelim was in the Beis Hamikdash. That's why you don't find it there. But it is curious that it's obviously playing a significant role, yet there's no indication of exactly where it was. But you're 100% right. You won't find it on that map there.
Maybe they didn't put the vice was sacked.
They didn't want to give its identity. Yeah, could be. I don't know. All right, let's pause here. We'll say a Kaddish to Rabbanan. Rabbi Chanani ben Akasha ben Ratzah Kadosh Baruch Hu